So,
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Finally Feel Free event. Today, I have a really special guest, Dave Markowitz. He is a renowned intuitive healing practitioner, two-time best-selling author, and speaker with nearly 3 decades of experience. His self-published book, Self-Care for the Self-Aware, a guide for highly sensitive people, empaths, intuitives, and healers, achieved remarkable success maintaining a position in Amazon's top 20 list for 41 consecutive months. And Dave is also a faculty member of the Shift Network and has shared the stage with Deepak Chopra. And his work has garnered endorsements from globally acclaimed professionals, including energy intuitive and best-selling author Lee Harris and multi-award-winning producer and sound healer Barry Goldstein. And Dave's approach focuses on guiding empaths, highly sensitive people, and intuitives to transform their sensitivities into strengths. And his gentle and compassionate healing methods addresses issues at their root cause, promoting long-lasting healing, expanded intuitive guidance, and spiritual growth. And he does this through workshops, individual sessions, writings, and he also helps clients manage their empathic abilities, turning them from burdens into gifts, emphasizing self-care and one's unique sensitivities, and finding clarity, vitality, and deeper connection with oneself and others. Dave, welcome.
great. Just great to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. And today we are talking about the four original wounds and why we feel everything so deeply. And also to, yeah, just if you do resonate with being highly sensitive, to see it as a gift rather than a problem to fix. So let's just jump straight in. And I just want to ask you, what are the four fundamental wounds?
Great question. So, my journey, like many of ours, involved a lot of expansion. And each time I hit a certain level, I said, this is the pinnacle. And then something else would usurp that. So, my ego got in the way several times. And being to now say, this is the pinnacle, well, it's the pinnacle for now anyway. And learning about the original four wounds really transformed my own inner experience in a way that is just kind of hard to put in words. I'll try, of course, but they gave me an awareness that, like a really embodied awareness that we're all in the same boat together. And of course, we hear all the time, we're all one. And I think a lot of us have a mental understanding of that, maybe not a physical or emotional, more 3D type of experience of that, which is
Mhm.
a great start, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, I did a lot of mind body medicine, and then I became more aware of emotional connections and how they manifest in pains and illness. And I was intuiting things like, oh, you're angry at your dad from working with someone individually, for example. And then I had what I call an empathic awakening, which led me to understanding that we absorb things from other people so much, in fact, that we can actually have a pain or an illness in our own selves. It's actually someone else's burden to carry. So it
Mhm.
really kind of really dug into that whole idea of oneness. I mean, how would that not, indicate such, right?
Mhm.
And there's so much research now about adverse childhood experiences, uh, affectionately known as ACEs, ACEs, and how they manifest later on in life. So someone has maybe 5 out of 10 of the major ACEs, childhood wounding, whether it's parents being in a divorce, trauma, abuse, it could be a lot of different things. Of course, it's going to affect our physiology and then affect us later in life. And a lot of these things tend to put us in sort of a hyperactive nervous state, right? Or a nervous system in a hyperactive state where we're constantly looking out for danger or not trusting maybe as much as we could, or, a lot of different things happen emotionally, but also physically. It's like we're in an extended fight, flight, or fight, fight, what I'm talking about, or freeze
Mhm.
response. So there's a lot of research now about how it affects the body, how it affects the vagus nerve. I'm looking at all this and I'm thinking there's something underneath here even that is not really being addressed. So I kept that inquiry in my mind, and through meditations and working with people, I was shown what I later on called the four original wounds, which
Mhm.
are wounds of separation that we experience in the first, sometimes days of life and sometimes even before we're born. So I'll go over those. And of course, our reactions to these wounds determine how sensitive we're going to be in our life. And sometimes, we kind of get shut down. We kind of get squeezed in like an accordion, typically and hopefully by well-meaning parental figures in society. But of course, we want to be much more expansive. So each time we're shunted and reduced in some kind of way, we become more inward. We lose track of our authentic self, and so that was the journey that begins the expansion. And then I saw the more specific wounds, which we'll go into in a second, about what causes what and how that really can unite us as a people, realizing that if everyone is in the same boat, well, then we're all wounded in some way, shape, or form. Now, some will act out in violent ways, unfortunately, but getting angry at them is not going to work. That doesn't mean to not fight pick your battles and fight what you feel you are here to fight and or create.
Mhm.
It means to honor the self and also honor the other person's journey because they're wounded and hurting and maybe just more than yourself might be if you're in a more peaceful place.
Mhm.
And by really embodying this, I got to see a new level of inner compassion because if I can be nicer to everyone else, I could be nice to myself, right? So how many of us have that, self-critical gene, right? Not actually a gene, but you know what I mean? It's a pattern that we learn and we're quite often stabbing ourselves. And I would like to invite us to do a little more of this as opposed to stabbing ourselves in the heart with metaphysical knives.
Mhm.
So the and it's based on this idea that we all start from a oneness place. So when I was under hypnosis, I saw this realm and I called it energetic soup because everything looked connected like it would in a big bowl of soup. And yet it was still not, okay, there's the noodle, there's the, vegetable, whatever is in your soup. There's the soup. It's like this, it's just kind of a different image that I had never seen or heard of before about a oneness. And I realized that this was the place of unconditional love. This is being and being in source energy.
Mhm.
And of course, I mean, just think about that. I can felt your energy there for a second, just kind of go, right? Because just the idea of being enveloped in source energy is, if that's not enticing, I'm not sure what will be,
Yeah.
right? So as souls, we're in this realm and we learn or understand, or maybe both, that at some point we need to experience a 3D physical world and we kind of jump into the healing. Jump into awaiting mom somewhere on the planet, maybe on another planet, who knows? But for now, we'll stick with this planet.
Yeah.
And that separation from source energy into the physical world is really traumatic for a small child. Now, it's still being in this sort of warm environment, but we're also become much more in tune with our mother's emotional state and even physical state, perhaps. And as much as we might still feel a little bit of oneness, we're starting to feel a little bit less of it. So it's kind of a gradual first separation, maybe compared to others, but share them all and you can tell me what sounds more destructive. But what I really learned was all these things happen for a reason. Every separation sets us up on a path of going back to the oneness. And the
Mhm.
spiritual separation that happens at conception is a separation from a oneness into an individuated state. And if you let that sink in for a bit, you might even feel your body tense up a little bit because it can be a little painful. For some, maybe a lot painful. What I learned later on by diving deeper into this was the separation from source sets up our spiritual journey. There's a reason for the separation. And at some point, whether we're, 8 years old and parents say, okay, now you have to go to church or whatever it is, or you're 20 or even 80, and you realize, wow, I don't feel connected to something bigger than myself. Or we feel something is missing. We might not even have the words for it. And we go on the spiritual journey. For some, it's, walking the Camino. For some, it's going to a mosque, a temple. For some, it's being in prayer group. For some, it can be anything. There's no right or wrong. This is the part that, frustrates me about so many religions that, this is the one way to do it. And everyone else is wrong and bad and evil and going to hell and all that kind of thing. And it just never made sense, even as a kid. It's just so ego based. But, we're not here to bash religion because maybe some people get something good out of it. Whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you, I'm all for. I'm just trying to look at a bigger picture and say, okay, what wounds do we have underneath all of the childhood wounds that start and set up a pattern for even more childhood wounds that we then get to heal later on. So the first separation is a spiritual separation from source. Also, as we are younger, when the ego begins to form, so anything unlike perfect love forms the ego. The ego is basically a protective armor. It's saying, okay, that hurt once, I'm not going to let it happen again. So it creates this alternate identity. And every time we come from ego, it's much harder to come from spirit. They don't coincide, live together very well side by side. Kind of like the emotional body and the linear, rational, logical body. They just speak different languages. They don't get along very well. And our goal is to integrate them. So we're not consumed by anything too much. So as the ego forms, we're also deepening that spiritual wound because we're losing our perceived perception. I guess it's redundant, but you know what I mean.
Mm.
We're reducing our perception of our connection to source energy. So that, of course, is very painful too, and that can trigger a growth experience later on in life.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
second, what's that?
Yeah, just to recap. So the first one that you said was about spiritual disconnection, and now and then we're now talking about physical separation.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Of course, there's going to be some overlap, and these are just words that I used, and it helped me understand a lot more about what we're doing here. So
Mm.
I'm here to share the piece, if you will. I do a lot of other work, more specific healing work, but
Okay.
uh, when I first was introduced to you, my intuition said, let's do this. Let's talk about this deeper picture, and
Yeah.
maybe bring some peace to the planet by bringing an internal peace within. And that's what it's done for me. So I'm
Mm.
hoping it works for others. I've been teaching this for a few years now, so I know it works for others actually.
Yeah.
So the physical separation, if we think about it, so we're in utero for roughly 9 months. It generally feels pretty good, feels pretty safe. And, not to disrespect mothers in any way, shape, or form. It's just part of being human. And it's also part of I think, maybe the most difficult job out there, and certainly the least appreciated.
Mm.
We hear things like when you smoke, your baby smokes. That's a physical example of the physical connection. Well, and again, no disrespect meant here at all. What if a mom's depressed, struggling with life? Those stress chemicals then become part of the baby's experience as well. So some babies are kind of born into a stressful environment, in addition to the actual birth being very stressful. And this physical separation happens as soon as we're born, right? We'll go for this warm, loving environment and come out and like look around. And, I think when I was a kid, I looked around and said, oh, hell no. Can I go back now? Right? It feels much colder, much less connected. Personally, I had a digestive disorder when I was born, actually, and I spent 10 days in one of those incubators, so I didn't have touch, and I felt very alone and very scared, of course. And of course, my parents did as well. They didn't know if I was even going to live, but I showed them, my spirit showed them probably more accurately.
Mm.
So the separation at birth is really traumatic for infants. I mean, just think about it. How could it not be? Traumatic for moms too, of course, but it's part of the gig. It's how we got here, right? And we keep doing it. So that separation is really traumatic. And unless we're really held 24/7, which, it's hard to expect anyone to really do, it's hard to mimic that in utero experience. And one of the reasons why hugs, heart-centered hugs, of course, feel so good, because it's actually beginning to heal that separation wound that we experienced early on. The second part of that separation of the physical is as soon as the umbilical cord is cut, then we lose the actual, really physical connection with our mom. And that's really traumatic as well. And that sets up the path to a physical experience here and a desire to emerge physically with other people, and whether that's through romance or just hugs or just being in the presence of someone else. that begins to heal that physical wound. So it's kind of a reminder that no one is an island, to paraphrase that silly quote, very accurate one, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, that we can't do this on our own, even though the ego would like us to believe we can heal on our own. I mean, you've done tons of healing techniques, and how much easier is it when someone is leading you through it than when you're doing it yourself? We all need each other, and we need a safe container help that's provided by the presence of other people, ideally physically. But of course, in the world right now, there's a lot of things like right now, we're thousands of miles away from each other and we're connecting, and people are watching, hopefully from even more thousands of miles away. And so there's a oneness that happens there, and that's beautiful. And then, of course, it's a little bit different in person. It's more tangible. You can just pick up on things from other people, which may not be your desire as an empath, but there are ways of working with that, of course, to minimize the overload. So that physical separation sets up a journey on the physical plane to become more embodied with what's actually true for us and our actual, what we're doing here, kind of thing. So, of course, our body is our vessel for our soul's mission. And it makes a lot of sense to take care of it. And we're fed horrible foods. Well, in this country, typically, where it takes a lot of work and it's much more expensive to eat healthy foods. Embodiment practices are few and far between. We typically spend our lives kind of up here, especially those in the spiritual movement, if you want to call it that.
Mm.
And that makes sense because up here, spirit's not going to harm you, but in the physical world, you can be harmed. So the
Yeah.
challenge then is to bring ourselves back into the body. So there's a number of different ways of working with the physical wound. I'm just introducing the idea of that first for now.
Okay, great. And then just obviously you talk about emotional abandonment and authenticity loss, but I think I really want to tap into the fact that, you know, all of this wounding can be turned into like power, and it's not, yeah, like you're right, we've all gone through it and that's what creates the oneness. But then it's like the other oneness of coming together and being empathetic and like creating a new way of being and on the human journey. So I just wanted to ask you, how can we start viewing these wounds as something that is positive as well, rather than something to fix?
Right. Well, first, just knowing about them is an invitation to an increased awareness. And then knowing that everyone is dealing with it is kind of a way of maybe appeasing that inner pain that a lot of us have if I'm in this all alone. And as the empath, we can sense what other people are experiencing. And, that's an important thing because it helps us stay safe in the world.
Hmm.
So when when we learn to fine tune the empathic skills, we can really be in the presence of anyone that's triggering us in any way, shape, or form. I know it sounds like a big ask, but it's a goal, we'll say. And it
Hmm.
doesn't mean to not, leave a room if someone's driving you crazy. It means to honor yourself and tap in. And what I found is by working with these wounds, we heal ourselves from the inside out. Some call it increasing our vibration. The more whole we are from within, the less affected we will be by everyone else's patterns and wounding.
Hmm.
Of course, part of that, and part I got on a deeper level through the wounding work, is everyone is hurting in some way, shape, or form, right? No one escapes this birthing process that we've described only half of so far. And it creates a camaraderie, a connection, and it's an invitation to use that well, right? Because if you know what someone else is going through without even them saying so, you can get into your compassionate mode, right? You can really be there for others. So just kind of a random example. Um, I'll share it here. I'm not too ashamed of it, I guess. I've had some pretty down periods in my life. A couple of times, more than once, I did not want to be here. And, it's a very scary place to be. It's a place of hopelessness, helplessness, powerlessness, pain, sadness, you name it. It's all there. And it's so, so painful that I learned that I'm just like everyone else in that I can get to those really deep, painful places. But the end result of that, talk about turning a pain into a superpower, was that I now can hold compassion for anybody, no matter what they're going through. And people share with me all the time what they're going through. I hear things like, Dave, I never told anyone this, but, and they'll share something. And a lot of times when they've shared that in the past, they've gotten shame and ridicule and blame and how could you and what's wrong with you. And I just really, it makes me open my heart even more when someone's that authentic and raw and real. And because I've been there and I say, I hear you and I see you and I feel you, I mean it. It's not just, words coming out, it's an energy coming out. So if I can be with someone in their worst pain, it creates a safe connection. And that alone helps us become more comfortable with who we are.
Mm.
We've all had down moments. We've all expressed them or repressed them in different ways. And as an empath and a sensitive, we can really be present for other people's pain. And that's a big part of the healing process, right? So if you're working with someone who has not been there, it's just a different level of safety. And it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's just different. And what I found is when I can co-create that container of safety, people go deep. We can get into the emotional bodies. We can get into the emotions that are caused by some of these wounds that we've spoken about already as part of the healing process.
Mhm.
It takes the focus away from what's happening in the moment. And not that what's happening is wrong or bad, of course. It's a recognition that the wounding happens really early on. And of course, because we're not in any state to heal it early on, it stays with us. And then we get reminded of that wound seemingly over and over and over. It's like, the creator is knocking on our door and we're like, no, that's okay. We don't really answer the door too often until something really knocks us over.
Mm.
So for a lot of people that are listening, maybe that door knock was, wow, you're an empath. You're really sensitive. You need to learn how to guard yourself against incoming energies. To me, the guarding is actually not really using our gift for the greater good. It's actually creating more separation and potentially triggering some of the separation from when they were younger.
Mhm.
To me, it's more about opening and allowing, but it's also about feeling what's there, but only just long enough so I can know what the person is dealing with. And I'm not doing it in an invasive way. I'm not like doing a read where I'm not asked to do one. They're sending this energy already. I'm just choosing to pick up on it, but I also filter it when it's in the middle of the body and let it go through me. So I take it in, I notice it, I use a mantra, different movements, etc., to get me ready for that. It's an exercise called the keyhole, which you can probably find on my YouTube channel, actually. I don't know if we have time to go into that here, but it's a way of opening to what is, and your gift is connection. So it makes sense to really fine tune that so that you're not overwhelmed with whatever's coming your way. Rather, you're using it as information. And using that information helps you answer the question, who or what can I be, do, or say in this moment that will better the experience of myself and the person in front of me? The more I can ask that question, the more I'm releasing my ego's need to fix someone, to label something, to judge something, someone, and really just accessing the heart and my spiritual wisdom. So I'm intuiting, okay, this person needs space, for example. They need a tissue more than an explanation, right? They need to cry this out. They need to express their anger at whatever it is that they're holding anger at. So there's so much here.
Yeah,
Right?
there's honestly like there's so much here that you've really opened up for us. And of course, you have your YouTube channel that people can go and check out more. And I really like that this interview's kind of gone in the direction of healing these four wounds to really start tapping into that oneness in a different way and like really be present in our relationships and really be able to connect very deeply. And that's, what that's like freedom in itself. And I know you also have a free gift, which is Empathipedia, healing for empaths and highly sensitive persons. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that book was my second book on empaths and sensitives and intuitives. The first one, as you might have mentioned, I don't recall, was on Amazon's top 20 for 41 consecutive months, which is pretty good in and of itself. And then taking the fact that it was actually self-published, it's kind of miraculous. Like I didn't realize how miraculous it was. I had a conversation with the head of a publishing company once, and they said that just doesn't happen. And I said, but it did. Okay. So that book started the whole thing. And then after working with everything that came to me intuitively from that book, more information, more steps, more deepening processes came to me. And that book, the one we're giving away actually, is kind of it explains empathic wounding,
Mhm.
explains how to decipher what's yours, what's not yours. Because this is one of the big things, big challenges when it comes to healing is we often address whatever's going on in our bodies as if it's our wound,
Mhm.
which could be true. But if it's not moving, if it's not shifting, if it's not transforming, there's a pretty good chance it's an absorbed pain or illness, absorbed energy that becomes pain or illness in your own body. And it's very specific techniques for giving back what's not yours that are actually embodiment practices that work on a deep level and more permanently than the kind of very mental, oh, just give it back and be done with it. Because
Mhm.
we're here to learn. We're here to heal, sure. We're also here to learn.
Mhm.
These practices came to me that describe both the healing and the learning, so it's more embodied. So if pain or illness is yours, there's a certain set of techniques and tools to use. When it's not yours, there's a very different set. And as they say, never the twain shall meet, although they do meet, but one is much more accurate and helpful than the other, depending on what's going on. So those are explained in the book. There's also an A to Z of all the more common ailments that I work with. So everything from, anxiousness to I forgot what the Z one was. Oh, Z was funny because I didn't work with anyone that had anything that began with a Z. So I went Z, like lots of Z's, and spoke about sleep disorders. So it kind of it
Yeah.
worked. Yes. But the point is, I think it's a really fantastic book, and it's um it's a little dense. It's thick, and a lot of people are best served just reading a few pages at a time because there's so much information in there, and then ideally want to embody that. But if you really feel called, read through it, at once. And I do recommend starting in the beginning and then moving your way forward. That's the way it came out of me. I put in the introduction, the best way to get something out of this book is by reading it in that cover to cover kind of manner. And I know a lot of us, just kind of pick up a book and like, okay, right into it. Page 120, we pick up, oh, what's on 120. And that's okay, but do that after you read the whole book. So we're offering that free for everyone on this summit. Um, do you do you have
Yeah,
the
we'll put the links down below, and thank you. That's such a generous gift. That seems like a really packed out gift. So we'll put the link down below, and also your website, Dave Markowitz, as well, where people can find out more about your work, how to be part of your community, how to watch your other stuff on YouTube, and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for opening up this conversation about the four wounds and how we can come together again deeper in relationships, harness the power of being an empath, and yeah, just connect back into that oneness. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you.